All right, so Bernie Sanders in a recent interview gave a pretty good, nuanced, and honest take on Donald Trump being banned from Twitter. It's something that I pretty much agree with here, where he gets into this, and this is a really important conversation that has been being had recently surrounding tech censorship and how much power these private corporations like Twitter and Facebook have over political discourse and setting the boundaries of what is allowed to be said in polite society. And so he gives a really good take here. I wanted to read it to you guys because I pretty much agree with it in its entirety. And he gives a good nuanced middle ground take here on this issue, and he's really honest about not really knowing exactly what the solution is. But Independent Senator Bernie Sanders denounced former President Donald Trump in strong terms in an interview released Tuesday, but said Twitter's permanent suspension of the former Republican president doesn't sit right with him. Quote, "Look, you have a former president in Trump who is a racist, a sexist, a homophobe, a xenophobe, a pathological liar, an authoritarian, and someone who doesn't believe in the rule of law. This guy's bad news." So up front, obviously dealing with the liberals who love to accuse Bernie Sanders of being more in line with Donald Trump, getting that out of the way and acknowledging, yes, Donald Trump is a complete piece of shit. That's not the point of this conversation. So he continues that if you're asking me, I feel particularly comfortable that the president, the then president of the United States, could not express his own views on Twitter. I don't feel comfortable with that, Sanders continued. 2 days after the January 6th insurrection at the U.S. Capitol, Twitter obviously permanently suspended Trump from its platform, saying that the decision was due to, quote, due to the risk of further incitement of violence and that Trump's last post violated the company's policy against the glorification of violence. Twitter's chief financial officer also told CNBC that Trump will not be permitted back on Twitter, even if he runs for office and wins. Obviously, we just had the recent news that Donald Trump is planning to start his own platform, his own social media platform. So we'll see how that turns out, but he's not welcome back on Twitter as of right now, which we all know Twitter was his favorite platform to go to. He is a poster at heart, and that was where he posted the best. So Sanders, who previously labeled Trump a racist, said the former president was directly responsible for the chaos on January 6th and argued that Trump would go down in history as the worst and most dangerous president in history. So still holding him responsible for what happened on January 6th, but still prioritizing the free speech aspect of this conversation. So during the interview on the Times podcast, Sanders argued that social media platforms shouldn't be used to spread hate speech and conspiracy theories, and that the internet shouldn't be used for authoritarian purposes and insurrection. Sanders said he doesn't know how to strike a balance, but it is an issue that we have got to be thinking about. He also noted that while Trump was banned, quote, tomorrow it could be somebody else who has a very different point of view. So I don't like giving that much power to a handful of high-tech people, but the devil is obviously in the details, and it's something that we're going to have to think long and hard on, and that is how you preserve the First Amendment rights without moving this country into a big lie mentality and conspiracy theories. So yeah, that was all really honest, and I think the most important thing that he said there at the end was, tomorrow, it could be somebody else. And this is how leftists typically think about this, because we've seen people on the left be banned, and that's what frequently happens with these censorship flashpoints, I guess you could call it, is whenever a conservative is taken off one of these major platforms, then conservatives get all riled up and they say, oh, this is unfair, you're just censoring us because we're conservatives. And then usually these platforms respond by trying to level the playing field, even though it's not a level playing field in reality, and they'll just ban leftists for, off-color remarks or for having opinions that are, let's say, in disagreement with the state's position on some of these things, whether it's like Palestinian rights advocates frequently getting railed on by these tech companies, or whether it's like me personally. I joined Facebook a while ago, and the first video that I tried to post on Facebook for my channel page was about the protests in India, and I was banned from Facebook without any real explanation. They gave me the thing that said that I violated their terms of service, and I tried to go through their processes for getting that back and getting my page up and running, and I haven't been able to do it in literally months. So I was banned off of Facebook for posting about the protests in India, and I don't know what it was. In the thumbnail that I used, they had the communist flag in it, which they were waving at some of these protests, so maybe that had something to do with it, but I don't know. That's the point. The point is, these lines that we're drawing right now are arbitrary. They're just being decided by these private companies who get to set the terms of whatever the fuck they want. Okay, so that's the real problem that we're talking about here. It's private ownership and private consolidation of public discourse, right? These social media platforms are really the modern day town square, where if you want to be involved in political discourse or discourse of any kind, you kind of have to be on some of these social platforms, at least if you want to build up a platform in that way. And so it's extremely important to political discourse. They have serious effects on politics right now, these platforms. It's where you're able to, in many cases, hold politicians responsible or accountable, and be honest with your takes without having to be on some like mainstream institutional network like CNN or MSNBC. And that's the other part of this is, I'm glad that CNN is covering this take from Bernie, and they're doing it pretty honestly, but a lot of these people who work for the establishment networks like MSNBC, CNN, is they'll advocate for censorship because they don't really give a shit because they're protected, okay? These liberals, these moderates who work for these companies, even conservatives in many cases, they're not really going to be targeted because they're not really participating in the edges of discourse. They're not really, doing, in many cases, critical journalism where they're challenging the state's position on a lot of these things. In many cases, they're just stenographers for the state. And so in that way, they are protected or have a little bit of a barrier of protection because they're just status quo defenders. But if you are on the edges of that political discourse, you are under constant threat of losing your platform completely, and in many cases without explanation or justification at all, or with unfair justification. And so this is a really important conversation, like Bernie Sanders was just saying, because this is just going to continue to get worse, okay? As liberals are continuing this push for more censorship and more power and consolidation for these private companies, it's just going to keep getting worse. And I don't know. I am somebody who participates in these online platforms, and I could literally get banned at any point, or any one of your other favorite leftist commentators. I'm not saying I'm your favorite, but anyone that you like on the internet who makes videos like I do, or tweets like I do, or whatever, they're at threat of being banned for basically no reason at all, or without any legitimate explanation. And so this is a serious problem that we have right now. And honestly, in my opinion, the solution is you have to treat these companies like public utilities, or in other words, they shouldn't be private companies. They should be regulated. These platforms should be regulated, maybe even publicly owned, and regulated as utilities, because it should be a platform that's available to everyone. If you want to participate in political discourse, you should be able to do so, and be able to do so freely. Obviously, we already have laws in place to deal with people who are promoting violence or who are directly inciting violence, just like there are limits on free speech. If you go to the movie theater, you can't just yell fire and cause a panic, okay? You would be criminally liable for that. And so we already have laws in place to take care of a lot of that aspect of it. And it's really just about taking this power back from some of these private companies. It shouldn't be in the hands of private companies because they cannot be trusted to determine what is true or not, what is, acceptable in political discourse or not. Okay, whether it's Mark Zuckerberg or whatever the fuck his name is, or it's Jack from Twitter, these people are not the perfect arbiters of truth, okay? They're just flat out not. And so if you care about this, if you care about censorship, if you don't want your favorite lefties to be banned, or you don't want to be banned yourself, then this is a serious conversation that we need to be having, and we need to be aggressively pushing back on this right now, because it's just going to keep getting worse as time goes on.